Hi, beautiful ones. My intention with the Shamangelic Healing podcast is to be a platform that explores real-life issues and provides you with valuable insights and practical tools to support you on your journey of healing core wounds and reclaiming your power and manifesting a thriving, impactful life that you absolutely love. You see, it's my dream to inspire millions to shine. So if you find these topics valuable, please take a moment and share the podcast and leave us a rave review. This helps the podcast grow and reach the people that would greatly benefit from these insights. Thank you so much for tuning in and investing in your personal development. I'm right here walking this journey with you. So let's dive into this episode. Welcome to this episode of the Shamangelic Healing podcast. This is my sweet soul sister, Vylana Marcus.
Hello.
Who has a place as a ranch here in Sedona. And so excited, sister, to jam with you on really tapping into the embodied feminine and like how to embrace the warrior goddess within. This conversation is for women and men. There's something for everybody.
Yeah.
And
powerful for men to be able to hold the warrior goddess of the feminine.
Right? And how to support that.
Yeah.
So for those of you that don't know Vylana, she is this amazing priestess of sound healing. And I've been on the receiving end of the magic and the medicine that comes through your voice, your healing touch, and musical instruments. And so if you haven't yet explored her music, go to Spotify, go to YouTube, and enjoy some of her sound healing journeys. More recordings coming, which I'm excited to be.
Yeah, a lot of new music coming. And artist name is Vylana, Vylana.
You are going to love it. So go check that out and check the show notes. We'll have all of Vylana's links. And also a reminder that we're having a free gift of Balancing the Feminine and Masculine, a guided visualization. So always go and check the show notes for the free gift and information about the online course, the virtual course about awakening the sacred feminine and womb healing. So that has been a powerful offering. So go check that out as well. So, sister, I'm so grateful that we are dropping in today about this. I've been watching you together. We have co-facilitated before different experiences, especially for the Fit for Service, the Aubrey Marcus Mastermind, and your medicine is powerful, sister.
Thank you.
And I think that, the conversations that we have had have been about awakening the power of the feminine and how to remember and reclaim that warrior goddess that is. And a lot of the conversations that we've had have been about where we haven't.
Yeah, it's been learning through the contrast.
Yeah. In that, I want to tap into, first of all, what you think it feels like and what it looks like to be embodied and be in that warrior, priestess, goddess energy. Like, how would you describe what that feels like? Yeah. And then we'll get into what is in the way and what we kind of have to move through to realign with that.
Yeah, it feels like, from a very general sense, just really standing in your power and being really grounded in your truth, not being passive to life and just sort of like a flowing object, but an actual co-creator with life, having really defined, healthy, loving boundaries that you tune into and that you sense, which you understand are really loving of yourself and really loving of other people, and just really holding in integrity everything that is true to you, not being afraid of the perception of the environment and the judgment in the environment, but just standing so truthfully in, this is who I am, this is how I show up, this is how I serve, this is what I love, this is what I believe in, this is who I am.
This is who I am. I love that you said that, because I think a lot of times in my personal life, and we were talking about yours too, we weren't standing in that power because we didn't know who we were. Yeah. We were leaking our energy, not using our voice, and it feels like not standing in our power or embodied. And seeking external validation.
That's a big one.
Oh gosh. And we were talking about this. It seems like all of the chakra energy centers are involved of like being in your body, being in the root, and
feeling safe with yourself and with others,
which requires a level of tapping into that feminine intuition that a lot of times we give away to validate or appease other people or get their approval, and so we start self-abandoning in order to seek external validation. So then there's that solar plexus around our identity, which we kind of give away to get that from other people. God, is that been a journey?
That's like we could literally. I could talk about my entire story of giving my power away for like the entire rest of the day today.
Yeah, right. So, which we are going to get into.
Yeah, it's a really, really, really big element of it.
Well, and also the part that separates us from the male gender is like our womb and our intuition and our power center of being able to create from that place. And when there's disembodied sexuality,
that's a whole
just maybe just perhaps that power center where we create from. That's where I think we lose a lot of our power is giving it away in unhealthy sexual experiences where we're not really standing in our power.
For sure.
And then a lack of self-love. And certainly it feels like
stifling.
The throat chakra is so oppressed in the disembodied or the disempowered feminine. So, and like not being connected to your spiritual truth and your soul essence, like all of those things create the disembodiment.
Yeah.
So where do you think that began for you of losing that connection to your soul essence, your power as a young woman? Where do you think that started, the journey away from self and truth?
Yeah, I think there were different levels of it. Like I could go back to childhood and I think a lot of us were raised, and it still exists in schools. It's like this punishment system with your expression being wrong or bad, and you get punished or put in timeout, or and I don't understand what it's like to be a parent, so I can't pretend like I know the best way. However, I think on some levels that sort of system created constructs where I was feeling like, well, if I express myself fully, I'm going to get in trouble for it, or I'm going to lose love. Love will be withdrawn from me. So that's like the seed of where it really began. Fast forward to, my adolescence and my teen years, when I'm becoming a woman and I was going through a lot of, childhood trauma around that time and depression and contraction. I adventured into, it's funny that I use the word adventured because literally it was sort of like a roller coaster ride that was just like hands up, no authority at all. I entered into my sexual intimacy in a way that was so disempowering, and something that I had mentioned to you earlier, I did a recent ayahuasca journey at Soltara in Costa Rica, which is unbelievable and such an impeccable space, and I knew I was being called to the medicine to help prepare my womb for motherhood, energetically, for my womb to be a safe space to steward, my children through my body. And I've been feeling that call for a long time. And so I, got there without attachment, but I'm like, oh, maybe I'll get this Mother Mary blessing and it'll be this like super beautiful thing, which on some levels it was. But my second night, what I had to go through was memory after repressed memory of all the times I have transgressed myself, that I had betrayed myself. And a lot of it was, from when I was learning about my sexuality in my teens and early 20s, and I had no guidance whatsoever, not even like the birds and bees conversation, like nothing that was practical or talking about the body as a temple and having honor and reverence for yourself, and what happens when you're allowing energy in somebody's physical body into your body, what energetics are taking place there. And so I had to go through many different sexual partners that I allowed into my body and feel from my purview, from a spiritual level, higher purview witness perspective, that I was giving myself, I was opening myself in that way because I wanted love so bad.
Yeah.
I wanted love so bad, and I thought that that's, you know, how I could receive it, and that would make me validated that I was worthy of love, and that would make me desirable, and that would make me beautiful, and it would make me all these things that were worthy of love. And then I had to feel from the masculine perspective the absolute non-reverence for me whatsoever, not respect, not honor, and in some cases even this like very dark kind of defiling nature of the masculine. And I'm not, you know, these are my personal experiences. I'm not putting this out as that's how the world works. I think on some levels it does, but this was my experience of my entering into my sexuality. And I felt this like the womb is such a powerful space of creation and transmutation that I could see this energy happening where I was actually taking on, because I was inviting them in, I was taking on their shadow or these darker expressions, and then I started exhibiting them. So it was this, I mean, this entire ceremony was like, I mean, it was work. It's like what they talk about, you know, in ayahuasca, where you're facing your deepest fears. Like this was so repressed. I mean, in other instances where I just was so not in my authority to have boundaries and say no, you know, even experiences like that, it's like I didn't want to do it, but I didn't know how to say no. I didn't have enough, I just wasn't empowered to be able to feel like that was okay to say no. I was never taught being empowered in that way. And so, yeah, I went through so much energy in my body of just this shame and guilt for all this stuff I was carrying energetically all the time. Like that's in your unconscious mind.
And in your body.
It's in your body. It's happening in my dreams. It's like those are things that are programming the way I operate, even though I feel very healthy in my sexuality now. And what was required of me in, you know, that healing process was forgiveness for myself, that I didn't know any better, that I was doing the best with the tools that I had at the time. But I just remember feeling like I wish so badly that I had somebody like me and me in this present moment to talk to me in an empowering way about sexuality, not to be like, don't have sex, but just be discerning about how things feel to you, or just having any kind of tool to, and maybe I wouldn't have listened. You know, that was one of the things I said earlier. You know, when you're young, maybe you're not going to listen, and maybe you just have to learn the hard way. There is, in being able to speak to this right now, I can be medicine for other women. So maybe on some levels that was important for me to experience that way. However, you know, I wouldn't have had to unravel so much that I still on deep levels feel like I'm unraveling in really, really like opening fully back up to my sexuality, because I'm, you know, in a very safe container with my husband. But, you know, had I not had to do that, like what could my womb power have been creating all along?
And how different this will be. Thank you, first of all, for sharing that very vulnerable about, you know, that kind of more sexual promiscuity, or just not discernment, or not knowing how or when, or that it's possible to say no.
Yeah.
And I think what's really common in the clients that I've worked with, and my personal experience is a common thread with yours, is that there's just not great information. And so most of us listening and watching probably also in some way either had no information,
None,
or role models that were not embodying the correct, you know, they might have said, you know, different things that weren't necessarily coming from an empowered place.
Yeah.
You got to get a man and keep a man.
Yeah.
Is not necessarily like, okay, but like, is that really good advice?
Yeah.
You know,
or even being empowered in your pleasure.
Yeah.
Like that's part of the sexuality that's beautiful. It's like really being empowered with your needs. What, like, do you like to be really sensual and touched in a certain way? Being able to speak to that and voice it, and actually like learn with another how to have beautiful sex. Is another part of the empowerment.
We just didn't know. And then our partners also, you know, young men in their teens and 20s are also not getting great information, or their role models are like, okay, you got to hit that, you got to get that, or it's porn.
Yeah.
And like, so we get to be with how we're currently being socialized around our power as women, which from a young age, we're taught to accommodate and please and look pretty, be passive, and have role models that are disempowered role models, women that don't have their voice or that are using their bodies sexually to manipulate and get power. And so in the journey of reclamation, it feels like, and this is what I'm doing with the womb healing sacred sexuality course for women, is awakening that sacred feminine. We're going back to those times where, okay, we abandon our body to get love, to get validation, or started, wearing things that would get attention, and realizing how much of the throat chakra started getting oppressed, that it's not okay to express your needs, whether that's guilt or shame or
afraid or fear of losing. I mean, I think for me, the oppression of the voice was a fear of losing love.
Yeah,
it's like, if I actually speak what I desire, then this isn't going to happen, which is actually showing you where it's not in alignment anyway.
Exactly.
So it's like a gift.
That if you do express and they leave, you're like, that's a great clue.
Yeah, like, thank you for showing me.
Yeah.
However, when you're young and you don't have a guide or a teacher to walk you through these different phases of the cycles of life, it's like you're kind of just on your own, only operating based on the feedback that you have from your environment, which, like, how many people listening had really good models in relating to any of this. And
your first sexual experiences, you can be validated for for abandoning self. That says, oh, when I don't speak up, when I do compromise myself and I don't say no, he likes me. And so we can be validated, and oh, mom said, oh, he's a great guy, keep him. And so it can also be reinforced, this self-abandonment to please or to get or to keep. The other thing is like, oh, if something doesn't feel alignment, but I want to keep somebody, so I have to keep self-abandoning, or I have to keep dishonoring that, wait a second, I want more communication or I want more presence, but I'm afraid to ask for it.
And that all comes from a place of not feeling worthiness and love for the self, which is also a massive, like, we don't teach things like that in school. How about we teach things in school that are actually valuable
and at
to
home
functioning
and at home,
having emotional intelligence and actually, like, feeling self-love. Like, I think that's why so many people, we're on this spiritual path with that as the North Star. We're learning how to, like, return back to that, because all of these things ripple out from the lack that's happening.
And that in that middle school, like early teens, is when there is that disconnection from self to seek external validation, where that's where it begins. And then from there, that guides how we dress, what we say yes to, what we say no to, and where we self-abandon to get that external attention. And the journey begins. We start to leave our North Star, and the disempowerment begins. And like I said before, it gets reinforced a lot of times when a man is just, it gets socially reinforced for a man. Hey, did you nail that? Did you get that? They get the external validation from other men. And so we also get to see from a man's perspective what role models, what's being reinforced, and how if we play along with that, we're teaching men how to treat us. We're teaching other people that it's okay to dishonor us if we're participating in that. And of course, there's also the journey where there isn't consent, where there is non-consensual sexual attention or experiences. And I want to give voice to that also being the case when we're not in our bodies and we don't know how to say no, or we've not listened to our intuition and find ourselves in situation where there's sexual distortion, sexual oppression, or sexual abuse. And then on top of that, there's another layer of guilt and shame and healing that happens from, did I ask for this? And like, I feel bad. And
there's also the level of, on a huge level, I can't believe I allowed myself to show up to that. So the shame and guilt, like it's like all the energy that needs healing and resolution and love is actually getting pointed inward. I transgressed myself. How could I do that? I'm so embarrassed. I don't want to talk to anybody about it. That was my experience with being, sexually violated and other things happening that I won't get into, but it's like, I never told anybody.
Right, here's the secondary wound of the wound itself. Okay, there's been some, let's just say, sexual distortion, whatever that looks like. We all have had it, men and women in different ways.
Yeah.
If we're really being honest and authentic, whether we've been the perpetrator or when we've been the receiver of some distortion in our ignorance, in our unconsciousness, because we get to recognize that there is a reason that we're coming into those experiences from what we've learned, what we've, in our unconscious, what we've been guided to is we participated in sexual experiences, let's just say, that haven't been clean. In whatever way we've participated in that. And I want to recognize the secondary wounding that happens when we can't now talk about it because I don't want to tell my mom this happened.
Yeah.
It's not safe for me to tell anybody else. So there's this secondary oppression around the throat chakra and even more guilt and shame layered into the womb and even more disempowerment around the solar plexus and identity. And so in reclaiming our embodiment as women and healthy relationships with men or with women, the warrior goddess is going to have to go in and this is part of the warrior goddess, is to go in and be with those parts that are ashamed and speak about those parts that have been wounded, desecrated, dishonored, whether it was by our choice or non-consensual, is to actually go into those places. And I think, like you were saying, God, I wish I would have had an auntie like me. Well, we get to also be that auntie that holds that 6-year-old, 12-year-old, 15-year-old, 21-year-old and say, honey, it's okay.
Exactly.
And to just reparent that part and hold her in her ignorance, in her guilt, in her shame, in her trauma, and give her that support that is non-judgmental and totally safe. Full Mother Mary energy.
For sure.
So what has been your process for healing the wounded parts of yourself?
It has been literally exactly that. Like, I actually did a little ceremony ritual with myself yesterday with some things that were arising from a bodywork session I had. I was having all these repressed memories pop up and a lot of energy of shame and guilt and pain. And, the way that I've healed so much of that stuff is to be in my authority of being the loving nurturer that I needed. So through visualization, meditation, whether I'm listening to sound or not, whether I'm in nature, whatever it is, literally using my imagination as a form of magic to be able to go back in time to that part of me and meet her eye to eye and look at her from who I am today, who's overcome with love, who's overcome all of that, and be able to hold her. Like, literally, I'll hug myself and feel like I'm hugging her and just be there for her in the way that she needed, tell her the things that she needed to hear, show her where I am and let her know that it would be okay.
Possible.
It's possible.
And it's okay to say no. And I think that permission, that it's okay to be yourself. It's okay to honor your own timing if you're not feeling ready to open your flower in a situation that if somebody judges you or somebody shames you or somebody bullies you, you don't have to honor their needs or their demands at your own expense. Like, it's okay. That doesn't mean that you're not lovable or worthy just because they're not capable in this moment to honor you. Like, learning how to say that it's okay to say no. It's okay to go at your own pace. And that when you do feel safe and you do feel respected and it does feel like the right time, it's okay to express your needs. It's okay to enjoy, and it's okay to set a boundary if you're enjoying here and it starts to shift. It's okay to change your mind, like full permission to be in the moment, honoring your feeling and your truth, and connected enough to your own body and your own sexuality to honor that, because it's not going to be that we give that to some other authority to have that boundary or that knowing. And as you get to know a partner, you'll be able to create that space where you can weave and stay connected in that. And that takes time to build that trust. And usually not as a 14-year-old or a 16-year-old or even a 21-year-old do we have the emotional maturity and the tools to actually be in a sacred space. Like I think that most of us didn't have that, and so we're engaging in all kinds of unclean, disempowered, sexual exchanges that leave a residue.
Yeah. It's also interesting to think of, like, we say all this, and I believe in it absolutely wholeheartedly, and I feel like if I had some kind of model, at least where there's a choice point, I could actually be like, okay, well, this is some information that I received, and I could be a little bit more discerning instead of just like,
a little more informed.
Whatever. However, like as young women too, I remember one of the things that came through my ayahuasca too is another way that I transgressed myself was by not giving myself the experience of my adolescence, wanting to be older, wanting to experience, and I think that's a pretty natural thing for women. And so it's interesting to kind of like feel into, like, as a young woman, what, maybe I would have made all the same choices and ended up at the exact same place, but I wish, one of the things that I took with me from my ayahuasca journey is, the loving space that I will hold for my daughter.
Yes.
And how I will, it's not like sexuality bad,
right.
But like be empowered in it. This is what that looks like. This is how I learned how to, you know what I mean? And really going deep with it. So
talking about
there's some kind of understanding. This is the ways that you can feel pleasure. This is like the beautiful, dance with God that you can have with another in this, in this ecstatic experience that's literally transcendental. Like there's just,
that it's possible. I think it's nice to know, like, the full range of possibility within sexuality, because a lot of times when we're in our youth, we're hearing, don't get pregnant. Guys are told don't get pregnant, and you're like, where is there? Okay, thank you. Okay, and how can that? Where is the conversation about connection and depth, and not just sex and don't get pregnant? I mean, that's a great start, and there's so much more about what the act of intimacy can be like.
For sure.
And what are the steps of building the foundation that is clear communication and trust, so that can happen. And how can even in our adolescence, how can a teenager have language and tools to start building that foundation?
For sure. And
with a partner that also might not know how, and so it's going to be our responsibility to start having those conversations that maybe they're uncomfortable in having, and if they're avoidant, that tells you that they're not ready.
But that is how you treat somebody as a sovereign being, not as like, you are my child, I own you, don't do this because I think it's wrong. It's like, let me give you some tools to empower your own sense of choice, because you are a sovereign being and you're going to choose what, instead of this like I always come back to that like punishment system. I feel like that system kind of just makes kids want to break free from it, instead of actually like being guided with tools to make their sovereign choice. Like they're their own soul that's coming here with their own purpose and path. And how can you steward that in the most beautiful, loving way, as a mentor, as an aunt, as a parent,
This is what we were talking about earlier about roots and wings. Like roots first is like stability and safety and like empowerment as a foundation, so that from that place you can advocate for yourself if you don't feel safe, if you're not feeling the trust, and like owning that, and that level of discernment that usually a 13-year-old, a 15-year-old, a 17-year-old is not having, and that power of choice and that power of being your own steward of safety, and having the structure. I know with my kids, I talked about like that because I knew I had nothing. Like my mom was like, "Don't touch down there." She didn't even have words for like it or that. It was just don't touch down there. Like what's
scary down there?
Like down there. Like there's no sacred communication, and we've missed our rites of passage. You know, that recognize that a woman that begins to bleed, that begins to awaken her womb to the power of creation, like that can bring forth life, that is a sacred, powerful gift and responsibility. And it's not just a guy's responsibility to wear a condom, or like, oh, wait, as women to recognize I have the power to bring forth life. That is a privilege and also a responsibility that we don't necessarily want to outsource to somebody else. And is it celebrated? We used to have these rites of passage to be able to welcome a young woman into womanhood and convey to her the sacred power she now has, and how to wield that, how to respect that, so that we can teach others how to respect that. And I think that that's another thing that's missing, is that conversation that women in our culture have not been having with young women that bring them into that space where only 15 to 18% of the population can actually bring forth life and perpetuate humanity. Half are men, the other half are women that some are too old, some are too young, some are choosing not, or some are cannot, which leaves 15 to 18% of the population able to bring forth life. And if we're not honoring that decision, here comes unwanted pregnancies, and then we're dealing with pregnancy terminations, or adoptions, or pregnancies where we're not quite ready. And there's another layer of guilt and shame on top of that, because we aren't really aware of the power of our womb. And so I think there's also returning back to the rites of passage that convey that level of reverence for the power of the womb.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. That's actually a conversation we've had previously I was speaking to just really getting in touch with my moon cycle and the different phases, and how it's interesting. Like I go through, I think PMS is actually a signal that's happening that is telling you to go inward. It's like we have our moon, we just put something up there to just block it from flowing, and then you're supposed to get on with life. And then when you're like impatient and emotional, people are looking at you like, what's wrong with you? It's a really sacred time where you're actually shedding energetically and biologically whatever happened in your last cycle, and to not tune in with that at all. When I came out here and I did an isolation in 2019 for a month out at the ranch, and I got really in touch with the potent energy that's happening during that time, because I had the space too. And I'm like, wow, PMS is actually like, it was almost like I was picking fights so that I would just be alone.
Right.
Because my body, it was like the winter the winter season of the annual cycle where, it's going within, it's connecting to your spirit and getting all these like really beautiful downloads and potentially grieving what's shedding. Like it's an opportunity to really tune in with yourself.
And that's, as women, we're not taught to honor that inward cycle of our moon. Plug it up, block it, rather than, that's our most intuitive time, is right before we release our blood, because that's the potential where life is, where we're most fertile and we're most intuitive. That's the time. And when we're releasing, like right before and when we're releasing, like that's the time to leverage our intuition and go inward. That's not the time to run a marathon. That's not the time to be very outward with our energy. And as women, we're just all block that, plug that, instead of like, leverage that time to intuit. What am I feeling? What is shifting? What is birthing? What needs to change? What is closing? And that is our most powerful time as women, which is where we block it. Here, just take some aspirin, go party, just stay up late and and that is another form of abandonment where we give our power away, rather than saying, oh, I'm not being social, I'm going inward. I'm releasing, I'm listening, and I'm also in the tribal energies. That's where the woman is the most intuitive,
Yes.
and she is the seer for the tribe. What
Exactly.
visions did you receive
Yeah.
during the moon that you can bring to the rest of the tribe that is not as connected?
Yeah, and that's actually the reason I wanted to bring that up. Was one of the things that I was really fascinated by was, just studying First Nations people and different indigenous cultures. They would actually, because women sync together, there's actually like an intelligence to that. And women would go into a moon lodge and they would get all the downloads. Like that time was a very, very potent spiritual space. And it's one of the reasons why, for like a Temescal, if you're mooning, it's not a disrespect like that's gross, you can't be here because you're mooning. It's because there is so much spiritual energy happening during that time that it becomes, the energy in a Temescal is already like
sweat lodge. Temescal is a sweat lodge.
Or Temescal is already like really heightened.
And you're already in ceremony.
Mm-hmm.
Those that are in the sweat are sweating and releasing from the steam. They're using the steam to go inside the womb to actually rebirth, where a woman that is mensing is already the womb itself.
Yeah.
She is already releasing. And while the others in the tribe are releasing their fears, are going through their healing and releasing density, a woman is actually already doing that, and so powerful when we can bleed right to the earth and then open the crown to the heavens to be like, okay, I am the spiritual channel right now to receive the divine guidance for the tribe. And so that was called the red tent, where it was literally a red tent where it was blood everywhere. And this is where the initiation of new young women into the tribe, and also a celebration of women that have completed their moon cycle and then are shifting into the crone and the elder that has more experience and more wisdom. We get to share those stories with the women, and that's our time to become more wise and hear the life lessons from the elders that have been through. And the stories are written on the lines and the wrinkles of their faces. It's not where we want to Botox that away. We've earned those wrinkles, those scars, and those are our stories, so that we can pass those on to the other women in the tribe. And I think that is also part of the warrior goddess, is to own our scars and to learn from our mistakes so that we can pass those on to our younger sisters.
Yeah, and coming into full acknowledgement is really necessary. And that's been, one of the things we also talked about earlier is like coming to this, what we're talking about, embodied warrior goddess, is, for me, has been a lifelong journey of learning through the contrast and being in full acknowledgement of where I was so out of integrity with myself, where I expressed, darker energies and habits and patterns. And just really like the wisdom comes from the full acknowledgement, from the healing, from the sharing. The expressing is huge, really like naming what you've been through, allowing that to be an inspiration for others, because we're so much more alike than we are different. And that's, it's why I have loved, this last year doing podcasts, because I have so many stories about my life. Like, you bring up a terrible kind of toxic relationship. I've done it.
Yep.
I see you. I see you.
We've all said and done some of the most horrific, embarrassing, and in keeping the shame in the closet is going to keep us from being that embodied warrior feminine, and actually recognizing, embracing, and integrating our darkest shadows, so that we can recognize that is our power too. We can say, oh, that wasn't me. It's like, oh, honey, that was totally me. The part of me that was so disembodied to have drunk sex and not remember it. Yep, that was me. Or to be so disconnected and wake up not knowing how I got to where I woke up the next morning. Just absolutely not remembering. And yes, that is part of who I am. That's part of this embodied warrior goddess, is recognizing, going back and looking at what part of me was making that choice? And from what place was I seeking something? Or from what wounded place was I reaching for something that brought me down a dark path? And it's in that exploration of the shadow, not in denying it, that we uncover the clues. Oh, I was using alcohol to numb because I was stressed. I was using sex for a stress relief or attention because I wasn't happy in other areas, or I was in pain from this other experience and I was reaching to numb. And it's in the discovery and the excavation of the why and the how that we start to figure out our way back. Like, oh, okay, there's another way for me to manage stress. Oh, there's another way for me to heal that wound instead of numb it.
Yeah, and where can I self-resource all of these things that I'm looking for externally is a big thing, because what's actually happening that's seeking resolution is it's looking at it from you. Yeah. Not anyone, nobody else can give it to you. It's looking at it. It's looking for it from you. And one of the other things that you said that I would love to expand on a little bit about the parts that we shame and reject, you know, one thing, a goddess that I would love to speak to, because she's so present for me, and I have a song that was a transmission of her energy and how she's been with me in my expression as a divine feminine archetype. One that I had a lot of shame around was anger. Yes. And I never had a healthy relationship with anger. It was like, for my whole life, I just tried to shove it down and not feel like my defense mechanism was typically to just numb out. It's like, if I numb out, I don't have to feel the pain. So, you know, it's kind of like drinking. It's avoidance. It's just, you know, making it go away because it's easier to not feel the pain. That's the only way that you can actually resolve anything. But that was my construct. And so anger, particularly in my former partnership where we were kind of dancing in this realm of polyamory, which wasn't exactly my desire. It was on, you know, it was on his end. And my throat chakra, I didn't have the strong enough voice to say, no, this isn't healthy and well for me, or in alignment, you know. And, you know, passivity to try to, and spiritual bypass, trying to be at the aspirational ideal of who I wanted to be. I'm light, and my ego attachment to being loving and compassionate and empathetic. It's like, okay, well, I'm always trying to live up here, but my humanness is actually here. That's saying, no, excuse my French, but fuck no, like this doesn't work for me. So that gap was just like, what would happen in the middle was I would get so much energy and, you know, built up that I would just boom into rage. Yeah. And I had such a negative cycle with these patterns of like, you know, keeping it together, being really loving and spiritual, and then just like the shadowy expression of Kali, that's the destroyer, that is like, you know, she devours delusion and darkness. She can show up in that shadowy way when you're not integrating her in a healthy way. And what I realized is in those expressions, I would feel so guilty and ashamed afterwards. So guilty and ashamed for the cutting words that I would use and just my, you know, violent, energetic expression. Literally, like, I'm very loving and I'm light. If you've seen me at all, like, you probably get that. I have also been straight shadow Kali, like the volcano. That's just like,
and that's the destructor warrior.
That's
not the warrior goddess.
No.
That's the warrior. That's the toxic masculine.
Yes.
That's the toxic feminine.
Yes.
That is like, I will devour you with the fire. And that comes from like not honoring self, which is right there in the solar plexus. There is going to be anger when we're out of alignment. And I want to speak just 1 second into that, the fire energy, and how much there is that social shaming around. Don't be a bitch. Don't be loud. Don't be angry.
You're crazy.
You're crazy.
A crazy
You're
woman.
And like how powerful that when you oppress all of your feelings, you know, whether it's anger or whether it's sadness, or your truth, when you oppress that, it's going to come out in unhealthy ways, either externally or internally. Yeah. And that, like, the first time I did breath work, you know, for me, rage was the first, because I had permission. Yeah. Rage was the first emotion, not like, you know, straight. I'm angry. It was straight up almost drew blood from my hands.
Yeah.
Like, okay, full permission to feel the feels. This is fucked. I'm so angry from all the times that I didn't
Never
speak
let
up.
yourself feel it. That
Yes,
your
and
boundaries were crossed because
totally.
you weren't, empowered in yourself. And the rage is seeking destruction.
It wants
does.
revenge.
Yeah.
It wants to destroy, for sure.
And something I learned from Kyle Kingsbury very recently, I can't remember who he quoted, but the different levels, like rage that's seeking to destroy, unclean anger is seeking to hurt. It's like, you hurt me, I'm going to hurt you. Clean anger is seeking resolution. Yeah. And that's the light side of Kali. That's the part of you that can actually be in tune with how you feel and witness, like, I'm feeling angry or frustrated right now. Not having to express it at a person, but to be in tune with yourself, to witness, like, this is a signal of where I'm out of alignment with myself.
Absolutely. And this is emotional intelligence.
It's emotional intelligence. That's another thing that's beautiful about what your moon time offers. It offers you the ability to feel all of the things. So the more you repress any of your emotions, like you said, they're going to come out in explosive ways. And so the point that I was getting to with rejection and kind of integrating Kali energy to where instead of being the hairpin trigger going to like an explosion or expression outward, I learned how to be more in tune with feeling the energy, allowing myself to feel it, allowing it to burn, allowing myself to digest it, and then seeing where it's signaling to me where I'm out of alignment, where I'm maybe not speaking my truth, where I maybe have a boundary that I'm not really in tune with. But the beautiful thing about no longer rejecting myself and having a healthier relationship with anger is I could actually, for the first time in my life, move into a space of as close as I can to unconditionally loving myself. Because when you are rejecting any aspect of your expression, no matter how dark it is, and one of the quotes that I posted on my Instagram yesterday that Aubrey always talks about is, your branches can only grow up towards the sky, towards the sun, towards the light, to God and spirit, as deep as your roots are into the ground. So your polarity, like if you're the brightest light, you are polarized by the same capacity for darkness, and the acknowledgement of that and the actual love and integration of that is so necessary for those roots to be able to hold your bright light. Otherwise, you're just, like you're toppling.
To learn from that.
Yeah.
And to learn from like the shadow, the instability, that rage is a clue. Yeah. Rage is intelligence. Yeah. Depression, sadness, irritation, resentment. Like these are all clues. And the more connected we are as women to our emotional body, it can signal, like the huntress, the warrior, the priestess, like all of these archetypes, is to recognize that the emotions are clues. When we're in that state of heightened joy and passion, we're in creation mode. Great, keep following that. Go, sister, go. Yeah. And when there's irritation, when there's conflict, instead of externalizing or numbing it, instead of blaming or sedating, it's like, okay, what is this showing me? Get curious about it. Yeah. Because usually when we're getting to that point of rage, we've missed all of the other clues of like, oh, this isn't in integrity for me, or this is past its expiration date, or this is not really in alignment anymore. Yeah. Or again, there's a boundary being crossed, or this I've not been really honoring my truth here, or I oppressed my intuition. Those red flags I ignored and ignored. Now I'm way off my GPS. Of course I'm going to be enraged or depressed. One of those polarities and everything in between. That's our GPS, sisters. It is. And like really embracing that is a big part of the warrior goddess, is to know that if I'm feeling something, whatever I'm feeling, it's for a reason, and it has intelligence, and it's going to inform our next steps.
Yeah, and it's valid.
It's valid.
Your emotions are valid. I think a huge aspect of, not being the warrior goddess was just not allowing my emotions to be valid. Yeah. Like, because they're going to be perceived by somebody else in a certain way, and I got to get it together so that I can show up to, just like, you've got to feel what you feel. And if, for in my path, it had to get bad enough. And by that I mean my entire span of relationships, I don't want to call it toxic. It was a lot of learning and and unraveling and shedding all of these constructs that got built and had to dismantle. But it had to get bad enough to where I was so desperate. I literally like grieved and wailed to the universe. I am not going to live like this anymore. I refuse to participate. I mean, and that sense of taking my power back was beautiful, but it doesn't have to get that bad. You have the choice in your actions and in your, you know, in your expression, in the way you speak your needs and and be in tune with yourself. Take the time to be in tune with yourself, so it doesn't have to get bad enough, so that you're not just kind of like moving with life, but instead you're creating it.
Very intentional. It's a difference between letting somebody else drive your sexuality, your soul's journey, or actually embodying and claiming that, and really standing in your truth, which means that you're going to navigate the accommodator habits. You're going to have to face where you're not having clear boundaries, where you're afraid to speak your truth, and your disempowering tendencies. Every single one of those is going to be coming up. And I've watched so many of my clients, and this has happened with me as well, where they're in authority in some area of their life. Maybe it's their business, you know, maybe professionally. And then over here in their intimate relationship, they're not really speaking their truth, or they're walking on eggshells, or they're accommodating their partner in a way that is dishonoring them, and staying in that victim disempowerment place. And I see this pattern a lot. Well, I don't want to lose him. I don't want to hurt him, and all of these justifications for self-abandonment.
And that and those choices, another thing I could speak to a ton of, it's like giving your power away to somebody else's experience is a declaration to the universe that you will put yourself second.
Again and again and again.
So for me, that always showed up as another woman where there was betrayal, or, you know, it was honest in my former partnership, which was just as difficult because it was so in my face all the time.
Okay, like,
however, I mean, that was literally the universe mirroring. I'm showing you where you're constantly putting your needs and desires second.
Right. So what advice would you have for a woman in this space that is feeling that that they're not being respected or honored in their primary relationship, or they're not feeling respected and honored in their career, and they're feeling disempowered by a boss situation, or they're feeling disempowered by a family dynamic, a parent dynamic, an in-law dynamic, where they're feeling not embodied and disempowered? What advice would you have for a woman that is wanting to come forward in that way, and come into more of a self-empowerment space?
Yeah, it's an interesting, because there's a lot. There's a lot of things that you can just speak to and be like, journal or this or that. And there's things that have worked for me. I used to work with a spiritual mentor, Samantha Sweetwater, who you know,
love her.
And you know, for me, guidance was the most important, to have somebody to be able to hold space for my process, because she held me accountable. Also, even though that was so, when she would ask me about my boundaries, I was like a deer in the headlights. Like, I don't really even know how to feel into them. I don't know. Like, I literally just didn't know. And I remember sitting down trying to write in my journal, and just like, I just couldn't, because I was so disconnected from my needs, and so connected to wanting the relationship to stay alive, that I didn't even give myself the permission to go there. It's like, say all the things that are the scariest to say, you know, and the signals, just like you're talking about, where you're feeling anger, where you're feeling frustration, where you're feeling resentment, any kind of sticky energy that doesn't feel like love and joy, that's showing you somewhere where you have a boundary.
Or you're not honoring a boundary, and where you're abandoning or out of integrity, or not listening to your intuition. So, I love that. I love that you said, first of all, get some guidance. Who has done this before? Who is embodying those qualities that I currently don't know how or don't have practice with, so that I can learn a tool, I can learn a different perspective, I can be seen, I can see myself, I can also be held accountable. And clear boundaries is such an important one. So we'll give a discount on our clear boundaries course. So because I think everybody needs that.
Yeah.
And
It's hard when you don't have the direction to understand, like when you've lived a life of being loved by being passive.
Oof.
It's so hard to deconstruct the desire to be like, well, I feel them so much, so I don't want to impose on their, like, you are the only one that has to live in your body. You're the only one that has to live in your life. You are the creator of everything in your situation. So everything that you don't love about your life, know that it is coming from your own choice. Like, you are the only person that has to live with you. You're the only person that has to be in that authority. And, you know, I think for some people, for me, who was really doing the work, it had to get so bad that I literally was just, you know, I think that's why those car accident moments happen, or people lose a family member, something that's so detrimental that just shakes your world up so significantly that you're like, I can't do this anymore.
Right.
You know? And so hoping that this gives a little bit of guidance to, you know, if you don't have a mentor or somebody to give you guidance, pray for it. Yeah. Call it in. Like, I called Samantha in through, I really need help. Please guide me to what could help me in this situation so that I could be more in authority over my life.
Just as we were saying earlier, that in our youth, we didn't necessarily have an embodied woman to help guide us about our femininity, about our sexuality, and about our power. And that means that we're having adult relationships that are actually with the emotional maturity of a 12-year-old. And we don't have the tools, we don't have the awareness, and we're continuing the pattern. And it's like, I witnessed a betrayal pattern in my life, and I was like, okay, what you just gave voice to, like when it's your choice, it's your life, then it's also radical accountability for where you're participating in the chaos, where you're not honoring, where you're not setting a boundary, where you're not embodied. That is going to be reflected in your relationships. It's going to be reflected in your body, in your health, in your finances, and in the health of your primary relationship. Whether you're in a relationship or not, it's going to be in the way you view yourself when you go to date, or what you will settle for is a direct reflection for your own value and worth at that moment.
Your relationship with yourself. And it has everything to do with you.
Only, always, every time.
Every single time, no matter, it has everything to do with you. And from that place, although it could be like, well, he sucks, and I don't feel that.
He lied, he betrayed.
But it's like your participation in it, it completely comes from you. And the beauty in that, however, is that you have the opportunity to be in authority over it. Like, you can't control anyone else's experience, their sovereign choices, their path. That you don't know what their soul's journey is. You don't know what their soul learning is. Like, that's theirs. The only thing that you have power over is yours. And that's actually inspiring and exciting, because it's like
liberating. Yeah,
it's super liberating. Like, okay, I only have to worry about getting myself right, coming into a deeper sense of love for myself, and in doing that work, you're literally healing the world. Like, if we are a collective, you know, we're a collective consciousness that is this water, and if your little ounce of a little drop of self-love for today drops in that, the water rises. Every single person's experience matters. And that's why, you know, I say really often, if you want to make an impact on the world, start with yourself.
100%. And then from that place, we're less inclined to engage in codependent relationships or those karmic relationships that are also repeating the patterns of the other person, where we're like, no, I'm breaking this pattern of betrayal, because let's just say the pattern is betrayal, and the story is, you know, all men cheat, or whatever. Like, and then it's like, if the story is betrayal, it's not that you're responsible for the fact that they lied or they cheated. What we are responsible for the fact is that what is our participation in enabling that? And what did we not say? What did we not speak? Or where was there a betrayal at the very beginning that attracted somebody that is in that frequency of dishonesty? Well, where was I dishonest with myself that, you know, that created that vibration? Where did I ignore a red flag? Or where the first time it showed itself, where did I put my head in the sand? Where did I not choose myself when they weren't choosing me? Where in those different situations did I not choose myself?
Yeah.
And that gives us the opportunity to break our patterns. And it's going to take a courage. That's why we said, warrior goddess, because sometimes it's going to take that courage to walk.
Yeah.
Not away, but towards self, towards truth. And that's why the priestess that, I put in the center of our altar today is Isis, where we can rise out of the ashes with our own wings, our own feminine wing around our intuition and our self-care and our honoring, our compassion and our intuition intact with our masculine wing, the courage to be honest and discerning and accountable and courageous and confident to be ourselves, regardless if someone's throwing a stone, regardless if someone's trying to throw a guilt hook. It's like when you're rising out of the ashes and you're really having clear boundaries, then you're not shackled by somebody else's judgment, their narcissism, their guilt, and there really is a freedom that comes from that. And that's where the warrior goddess is like, I am alive and I am me, and your response to that isn't about me, it's about you.
Yeah, and it's actually very non-dramatic, and I'm not saying I'm absolutely there. Sometimes I get triggered by people saying rude things on my Instagram. It's totally a hook that I'm just like, I feel like I need to say something, and I track myself. It's kind of like, okay, I see where these programs are coming up, where maybe I want to be loved, maybe I'm, don't like judgment, and I feel like there's a lot of different
it's an evolution. Like, we're still in progress, both of
but
us.
also, going back to a former situation, like when I came to a place in myself where I was so loving of myself and feeling really sovereign and really empowered and had clear boundaries, it just wasn't dramatic. Like the same conversations that would hook me into this like drama, I simply would just say, I could see it, what was going on, and simply just say, I don't choose to participate in this, in this exchange in this way. I'm happy to come back to it. It's not that I don't have love or I can't hold space for this, but like I'm not engaging in this realm of, conversation. It was really simple. And so, and I was like, wow, that felt so adult and so non-dramatic. And I didn't have to be like, here's my boundary. Like it
Get all
wasn't
angry about it.
Yeah, it wasn't like chaotic or volatile. It was just like, I feel really grounded in my sense of truth, and it just it was non-dramatic. It's like, wow.
And it's like when you really cultivate that internal embodied sense of self, then you're actually able to hold space for someone's reaction without attachment to it, without trying to control it, without being hooked by it. It's just like, oh, the embodied part of me is witnessing your 12-year-old self, your 6-year-old self, your triggered self responding, whether it's jealousy, whether it's guilt or shame. It's like
love.
All kinds of it. You know, whether you're in an angry, whether you're in blame, whatever it is, like from that embodied goddess space, that's really where our power allows us to be the flower of compassion in that moment. That isn't trying to change it, isn't guilting or shaming it, isn't running or hiding from it, and is really just seeing it. And that's where we get to embody that Mother Mary energy that is, oh, I have compassion for your experience. Not pity, but I have compassion for what you're experiencing, and I don't have to self-abandon to fix it or to make it wrong. I'm just holding my space and sense of truth. And I then another piece that I think sits with that is when something isn't in alignment, whether it's a relationship, a friendship, a business thing, and you speak from that sense of truth. What I've felt a freedom from is like when I'm blocking something, blocking, like, you know what? I need to put a boundary here, and I don't have shame or guilt about it. And I remember blocking actually a family member, like an extended family member, whose drama and chaos would just like, I'm like, this can't be in my inbox. Like I can't. I'm honoring myself and my mental and emotional space that 20 dramatic, chaotic messages from a place of ungroundedness or drunkenness or hurt or pain or wounding, like as I learn to honor my boundaries and my space, and I honor it as a sacred temple, whether that's sexual energy or whatever it is, or fear, like I get to choose. And I actually blocked a family member and I felt great about it. I was actually literally like, I'm unchoosing this being in my space.
And you can do it with love. It doesn't have to be, it's just the honoring of, this is what I allow in my energy field, and this is simply what I don't. Doesn't mean that I don't love you or can't hold space for you, but just like in these kinds of interactions, I don't choose to participate in them. So please honor, please honor my needs. And it's actually surprising. Some people get triggered by boundaries, and everything that gets triggered in them is them projecting all their stuff onto you. It's not about you at all. And some people actually, when I've been afraid to hold a boundary, have actually really been loving of them.
They're like, oh, thank you. Like, it depends on their level of codependency. If the boundary is provided and respected, it depends on what they get from the codependent relationship. They're more likely to throw a tantrum if they're not getting your attention, you know what they need out of the relationship when you're not participating in the codependency any longer. Yes, there's likely to be a tantrum thrown, and you get to see that. And you're participating in the codependent relationship that contributed to that.
Yeah.
And I felt so much more loving. I could hold, because my container was held more by me.
Yeah.
Because I can say, hey, I created the invitation to respect it. It was beyond this relative's ability to respect it. Whether that's a man in relationship, whether that's a business partner, whether that's a relative, a friend, like we get to witness if we can set that invitation and it's beyond their capacity to honor the boundary. It doesn't mean we move the boundary.
Yeah.
It means we actually establish it and realize that I can't expect them to respect me if it's beyond their ability. And like really being with, this is beyond their capacity, and it's okay. I can have compassion for that instead of judgment that they should have that capacity or they should be different than where they are.
Yeah.
That actually opens the doorway of the warrior goddess heart.
Love them where
and
they're
like
at.
my ability to love this person expanded exponentially because I was in a safe space then. And so what is, in closing, I'd love to know what is, any other advice that you would have on that journey of witnessing your shadow and having compassion and forgiveness for those parts of us that were less conscious, and our journey to expressing boundaries and our sovereignty and reclaiming our power. Any other advice that you would have for women on this journey that are really like, I don't know if I can do this and express my truth here?
Yeah. I mean, I alluded to it or spoke about it a little bit earlier, but Kali Ma has been a massive paradigm shift for me in really embracing my power. There's a book that I read, I think it was on Apple Books, called Awakening to Kali, that talks about her mythology in many different ways, her shadow expressions and how she can show up in the feminine or the masculine, and actual really healthy ways to integrate her. And for me, my shame and guilt and that kind of destructive anger was around anger, and destructive tendencies was around anger and rage. But her archetype is the devourer of delusion and darkness and the ego and everything that isn't in truth with love and divinity and light. And she transmutes that energy into light. So her as an archetype has been a powerful teacher for me. I also spoke to, going back and doing that work where you're developing a relationship with those younger aspects of yourself that need your love. Like if you envision the quantum space of reality, everything's happening at the same time. So your ability to vision and imagine going to your childhood home, going to this adolescent who was about to get in a situation that wasn't empowering and that was going to take a long time to unravel, and just having love, just giving her love. Yeah. Even though she's going to make the choice she's going to make, even though, I love you for everything that you are.
Yeah.
You don't have to do anything to be loved. You don't have to be perfect. You know, like, this is your soul journey, but like, I'm here holding you, loving you, and you're not alone.
I love that. It's a reparenting of the inner child. And,
Yeah.
and I think giving advice like that we didn't have at 12 or 16 or 18,
for sure.
like giving advice like, hey, when you hear this from somebody, whether it's a girl that you want her approval, or if it's a guy you want him to like you, like giving advice to navigate those situations so that we could make different choices, so that when the pattern repeats and there's the opportunity in current present day to abandon self to get a girl's approval, to another woman's validation, or to abandon self to get a guy to like, or to keep a guy, whatever it is, that we can play it differently in our modern space. And I would add to everything that you said, which is yes, to do the same things, and I love that. Is to also connect with your higher embodied warrior priestess. How does she stand? So as much as you use your imagination also to go back to your 7-year-old, your 11-year-old, is to also go forward to what is your own archetype at a soul level that is in her power, that is in her body, that is in her truth, that is in grace. She's like in her confidence, not from a place of effort, but from a place of inner peace. Like, how does she move? How does she walk? How does she speak? And get with that version of you, because that future embodied you can also inform how to walk through situations that you're currently
for sure
like uncertain about or don't have the experience
it's
with.
Like somebody, my friend Jesse Elder, I think I'm going to get this wrong, but he said this quote that I loved. It was like, our imagination or our intention and visioning is actually our future self remembering.
Yes.
So it was like that connection that you have forward or backward is so potent. And something I would love to add, just speaking to that, warrior goddess embodiment, one of the archetypes that I actually did a song for in our recent Fit for Service summit of different divine expressions of the divine feminine, was the huntress. And so this vision that you get of the huntress, like, another thing that I would offer is spend time with the earth and really have a dialogue. Like, I spent a month here in isolation, and my practice was simple. It looked like this. I would take some tobacco out, I would make an offering, just drop it on the land, and speak to the earth a prayer. And I would just listen, and I would talk to her about my dreams, and it just was me and nature. And there was a communication. Like, I would get messages from animals. It was like anything that I was seeking guidance for. You don't have to do plant medicine. You don't have to do these external endogenous things. Just be in nature, which is you, and listen. And then have this vision of the huntress. Like, if you think of Pocahontas, when she's like following John Smith, she feels nature. She's touching the trees. She's walking barefoot on the earth. She expresses the animals. She's not in fear of them. She knows how to sense them, how to be with them. It's like Neytiri from Avatar. It's just so in tune with that knowing, that sensing, that knows where to go, that knows how to be still, that knows how to listen and be present and sense, with your senses that are other than your, physical senses. Like, that superpower of being so in tune with that helps all of the rest of this stuff come alive. Like,
agreed, 100%.
My reconnection to nature has taught me more than any plant as much as I have so much reverence for everything that I've received in plant medicine. My month that I spent here in isolation, just spending time with the land and with myself, I found out more about who I was than any other experience in my life.
She's the most phenomenal shamaness.
Yeah.
It's just Mother Nature. It's just
every...
A tree will show you how to ground. A mountain will show you how to embody. The water will show you how to be flexible and move around obstacles, that you don't have to push them, that you can go with the flow and twist and turn. She'll teach you flexibility, and the winds of change can move clouds out of your space. And so I love that you're talking about, Mother Gaia and Mother Earth as a sanctuary, as a classroom, and as a safe haven, and to just you know, like I've done my visions quests, like quiet in nature, and it doesn't take a month or 5 days. Like it's just, can we spend a half an hour? Can we just bring that into our daily practices? I love it.
And learn from the cycles. Like life goes in cycles. You're not just on this steady. I mean, you're in, you know, these cycles of contraction before a big expansion. Like that's just the way things work. There are all the seasons which represent different parts of our psyche, of how we express. It's like in the wintertime, you're not like the energetics of how you are in the summertime, or in the springtime when you're birthing. It's like everything's coming alive again, and you have all this energy, and you feel like being more social and creative and all these things. Like just having an honor and a connection to what the earth can teach you, and indigenous cultures, you know, like working with the medicine wheel, like calling in all these different elements that help give life to the process of really being the embodied warrior goddess.
We're going to do a whole nother podcast of like shamanic, like the shamanic wisdom teachings of honoring the water, the earth, the fire, and the air, and alchemizing that, and honoring the fall, the winter, the spring, and the summer, and flowing with your creation seasons and your reclamation seasons, and like listening to, how does a tree fruit? Well, it starts with its roots. And so I love you, sister. Like same page. We seriously, we have so many tangents that we could go on. So this is not the end of this, like Vylana, like this shamanic goddess sister. And it's been an honor watching your medicine grow and your music grow, and mostly how you're embodying your feminine. And it's been beautiful to watch that transition and preparation for being a carrier for bringing forward life. And I've just chills. Like I know, like when you and Aubrey got, you know, together, I was like, yes, already feeling, you know, the preparation that both of you have been going through to dissolve what is in the way of stewardship at a deep conscious soul level, life coming through, which means you're clearing, he's clearing, your relationship is clearing, and the preparation of you know, of conscious, you know, life, conscious conception, and conscious parenting. You're laying the foundation for that, and just know that Auntie Hata is here to support both of you in that process.
Thank you.
And sister, thank you for the medicine you carry and what you offer. And I know that there's more coming. So go check out Vylana on Spotify and also on YouTube, so that you can experience the medicine of her work, and more coming. I know you're recording some more music, so I'm excited to hear that. So tell people where else they can find you. And
primarily those two spaces right now. I also, if anyone has heard of the Fit for Service Fellowship, I'm also one of the coaches that's part of the community, and it's one of the most stunningly gorgeous tribes of incredible humans that I've ever seen on the planet. I cry hysterically every single summit and just connecting with people. You can also find me there. My Instagram is...
So where do you find the fit? Because I know I've had the privilege when you guys come to Sedona. This is Aubrey's mastermind, the Fit for Service, Aubrey Marcus, and had the privilege of co-facilitating the Sedona experiences, which has been off the charts. The transformation, the heart, the vulnerability, the healing, the expansion is incredible. So where can people find the Fit for Service Summit?
We'll have to link it in, I believe, I hope, I should know. It's www.aubremarcus.com/fit-for-service. Yeah.
We will link it in the show notes.
We'll link it. It might be Fit for Service Fellowship, and I wasn't.
But you can just put that in Aubrey Marcus Fit for Service on Google, and you'll find it. But we will have it in the show notes.
Yeah.
So
I also have, so the music that I have on Spotify currently is sound healing music. It's great for meditation. A lot of people use it at the end of their yoga practice. I have a different variety of ones on there, and next month, hopefully right around my birthday, I recorded a song that was a transmission of Kali Ma and how she comes through in my experience of really being this powerful force of us bringing, empowering ourselves and regaining our authority in our life. So I did a music. It was so fun and cool. It's kind of like trappy and dancey.
Cool. I'm so excited to hear it.
I'm rapping, and there's going to be a music video with it that's going to be really cool. So I'm kind of branching out into these different spiritual expressions of just being the vessel for what wants to come through me. And it's
the empowered feminine, is because then our creativity really gets a safe space to shine and express. And for those that don't know, Kali, she's like the volcano goddess.
She's like Madame Pele.
Yeah, Pele is and that is, yes, transmuting life, but also like birthing. Like all of the Hawaiian Islands are birthed from that life-giving place of Kalima.
Creative destructive force. If you think about the volcano, it incinerates everything in its path. And within days, it births new life. And it's the richest new life. It's like the destruction of what no longer serves to give space to birth something new.
And that's like Isis coming out of the ashes of death.
Yeah.
And yes, parts of us will need to die. Parts of our shame will need to die to give birth to that embodiment and like really being the priestess and the goddess. Then yes, the parts of us we've left behind and the parts of us that are really not honoring that get to be transmuted and to give life, to allow the flower to blossom. So thank you everybody for tuning in. Go check the show notes for the free gift, which is going to be Balancing the Feminine and Masculine, a guided visualization. Also, our Awakening the Sacred Feminine Womb Healing virtual course. That is a beautiful series, and we go into this in depth virtually live with a small group of women together. And also we'll give you a discount on the Clear Boundaries course, because everybody, that's medicine for everybody.
It is.
For sure.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for tuning in. If you got some valuable pearl from this experience, please like it, share it, send it to somebody that you think would really enjoy it. This is how we get to reach more people. Go subscribe so you get the latest podcast when it comes live. And we appreciate you for tuning in and for doing your work, for going inward so that you can be embodied in your life. Man or woman, thank you so much. And thank you, Vylana, my beautiful sister. I'm so grateful for the medicine that you carry and the light that you are, and for the friendship that is continuing to blossom between us.
Exact same sentiments.
Yes.
Love you.
Love you too. And we love you. Thank you for tuning in. Blessings.